We continue, as David says, our series, Growing More Like Jesus, today, through the lens of Galatians 5 and the fruit of the Spirit. Up front, though, I feel I need to share that I've really struggled preparing this week. And there's lots of different reasons I could give for that. I think the truth of the matter is actually I'm someone who really struggles with this fruit of the Spirit that we're going to look at this morning. And maybe not, though, in the way that I think, and we're going to explore this, how we might often interpret this particular fruit of the Spirit, or how we might view it at first glance, if you will. See, the fruit we come to today is patience, as has already been alluded to. The thing is, I think often our understanding of it or our thought of it might be actually that it's all to do with waiting. And that basically is what it's talking about. And basically, we just need to be good at waiting. Now, waiting is something we all have to do at different times. Waiting for this, for that, for the other. It might be we wait for a delivery to arrive. Thursday morning, we'd ordered some gravel. We're going to do some work in the garden this week over the kind of oversight of my dad. Don't panic, I'm not going to be let loose. And we'd ordered this bag of gravel. I'd managed to order it the wrong day. I meant to order it on Friday. It came Thursday, and I got this message on my phone saying it's coming. And this was like 8:30, and I'm due to be praying with the preschool at 8:45, and I'm watching it track through Battle. If you know Battle of the early mornings at the moment, it's not quick to get through, and I could see it got to Tellham, and then I could see it got to basically where the traffic lights are by Tesco's, and then it got onto the high street and was there for quite a while, sort of thing. And I'm waiting, and I'm kind of counting down, is it going to get here in time so I can then sprint down the road and all that sort of thing. Maybe it's we wait for an appointment. Maybe a classic example would be for a medical appointment. You go and see the GP, or you have that phone consultation, and they say, we're going to book you in for this. You're going to go and see this person. You're going to get that scan. And then we've got to wait. And we're waiting for, the appointment to come up. Maybe it's particular dates we might think of, whether it's Christmas, whether it's birthday, whether it's when family are coming to visit, maybe from abroad, or we've not seen them for a long time. Maybe it's a special occasion, an anniversary of a birthday of notable ability, as we kind of shared and celebrated last week for a certain member here. And maybe it's something else entirely different that think of when you think of waiting. I was preparing, I was reminded of a time back in the autumn, standing on a Wednesday night up with the football club training. We all stood around waiting because no one had picked up the balls. You need balls to play football with, just in case anyone's not into football here and doesn't know that. And we're all just standing around, just waiting for someone to turn up with some of the balls. And the reality is, though, that some of us will be better at waiting than others. For some of us, it will come naturally and we'll really find no problem with it. For others, though, it'll actually really kind of push our buttons and we'll really quite struggle with it. However, I think our understanding could be that this is what Paul is writing about here in Galatians 5. He's basically saying one of the fruit of the Spirit is good at waiting. There we go. We've covered that. But actually, I think what, patience when it comes to the fruit of the Spirit, there's so much more that Paul is writing about here. Because it's not simply waiting. Patience here is talking about living a life in the Spirit, filled with the Spirit, listening to the Spirit, being led and guided by the Spirit, so that we might be able to wait on God's perfect timing. And that's even when life doesn't quite go along our time frame, or the schedule that we hope it would, or fit into the kind of the plan that we have. But what's more, that we might be able to do that in a way that glorifies and honors God. Words in Galatians 5:22, patience. Some English translations use the word forbearance or long suffering. And in many ways, I think these latter two translations actually begin to help us unpack something of what is being talked about here. I mean, the word translated from the Greek is makrothumia. It's talking about controlling our response to circumstances. It's not just saying, just kind of wait patiently and comfortably and don't say anything. Particularly Paul is writing in response to, verse 20, where he says, the acts of the flesh are obvious. Verse 20, translated, fits of anger or rage. comes from the Greek word thymoia. That's what Paul is talking about when he's talking about be patient. This is one of the fruit of the Spirit because it needs to, act differently to the way that the world is acting. It's about enduring hardship. Some of the things maybe that have been reflected on this prayer tree this morning. It's talking about weathering the storm. It's about not throwing our towel in when we just had enough. I want to read a few verses from Colossians 1, 9 to 14, which pick up on this, I think. It says, for this reason, since the days we heard about you, we have not stopped praying for you. This is again Paul writing, we continually ask God to fill you with the knowledge of his will through all the wisdom and understanding that the Spirit gives, so that, is the bit, you may live a life worthy of the Lord and please him in every way, bearing fruit in every good work, growing in the knowledge of God, being strengthened with all the power according to his glorious might, so that you may have endurance and patience, and giving joyful thanks to the Father who has qualified you to share in the inheritance of his holy people in the kingdom of light. Verse 10, live a life worthy of the Lord and please him in every way. Part of what we need to do that, as Paul is reminding the church in Galatia here, is patience. I don't know whether you're someone who, when particular events take their course, a switch is flicked, and I don't know the phrase is you see red, and it results maybe in that outburst, that anger, that rage. Maybe it's something that it verbalizes itself. Maybe it's something you keep inside. But there's something that just riles you because of what has taken place, because of what you've seen, because of what you've witnessed. Now, an initial challenge here is that, like all emotions, there is a scale in terms of their intensity. And anger is no different. But I think one of the bigger challenges actually here is that anger is not always bad. I was chatting with someone this week, and we were talking about the Russian-Ukraine conflict. They said this, they said, if people aren't angry about what Putin is doing, then there's something wrong with them. That was their view of the situation. Jesus himself, on more than one occasion, I think it's fair to say, he got a little angry. There was something inside him that bubbled up that caused him to stop and say, enough is enough. Matthew 23:27, it says, woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. And that's just part of a bigger narrative. If you go and read Matthew 27, there's a number of woes that Jesus refers to. And I can't imagine Jesus saying those words. And if you look at the full passage, I can't imagine him just saying them kind of haphazardly, off the cuff. Woe to you, yeah, you teachers of the law, Pharisees, yeah, you hypocrites. No, there was passion in what he was saying just through the words that he is communicating. Then what about Mark 11:15-17? On reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple courts and began driving out those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves and would not allow anyone to carry merchandise through the temple courts. As he taught them, he said, is it not written, my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of robbers. Again, I just can't picture Jesus, entering the temple and kind of meandering over to a money changer's table and just nonchalantly flipping it. And then just kind of wandering back and just seeing, hopefully no one noticed. Don't want to make too much of a scene. Don't want to kind of step out of line or any of that sort of thing. It was the act of someone who had had enough. And I'm not suggesting that he kind of ranted and raved, screamed and shouted, because actually we don't know that for certain. But I believe it's fair to say he was angry. Something was burning within him. There was something that caused him to act in that way. So this could lead us, when we reflect on kind of what it means to have the fruit of patience, could lead us to think, hold on a second, well, how do we then balance this one out? What are you saying here? What is the Bible actually teaching us? Are we meant to be patient or not? If I lose my rag, is that okay? Or should I try and, hold it in? How do we actually work through this? And this is again where I think we need to remind ourselves of what the aim is here. The heart of what Paul is talking about, the heart of what it means to follow Jesus. It's this rallying cry to live lives filled with the Spirit, with the power of the Holy Spirit. God's power within us, making a difference in terms of who we are and the lives we live. Becoming a Christian, deciding to follow Jesus, should have an impact in our lives, and it should have an effect upon us that will be seen in lots of different ways. It'll be seen in our personal lives just as much as our public lives. It will be seen amongst those that I know as much as those that I don't know, who are strangers to me, who maybe I never meet. It should be evident when I'm gathered as church, whatever that looks like, whether on a Sunday or throughout the week or not. So there are two questions that I want to kind of pose in regards to the fruit of the Spirit. And in many ways, I want to leave these for us to reflect on, both personally, but also as we come together and we stand alongside each other. The first is, what does it look like for me? Life, as I go through ups and downs. I think in part, this is that idea of actually, let's just have a bit of a situation report. Just, kind of fill me in on the status quo as it is. Where do I find myself in life? Give me that update. And I think God would want us to do that with him. I think he would want us to be real with him. Tell him how we feel. If we face situations, if we find ourselves in challenging moments where we don't know what to do with it, but it's boiling up inside us, then we need to be open with him and honest with him. And I wonder whether there's sometimes that we might feel a bit afraid that, we can't do that. I can't actually rant and rave at God. I can't actually really say him what I'm thinking, because that's just going to shock him, if I'm honest. It would probably shock a lot of other people if they knew what I'm really thinking at this moment because of what I've just seen or experienced. But certainly God, I can't verbalize that with him. And I think as Christians, sometimes we can be in danger that we internalize what we're feeling, thinking that, I'm not quite sure I can be 100% honest with God. I better just, keep it to myself, just in case it's not okay. And I can't, open up with others of how I'm feeling because, they might actually think less of me if I'm honest with them. And they really know what I'm going through and the things that I'm grappling with, whatever excuses I might come up with. And, we need to be open and honest with God and with one another. You look at the Psalms. A third of the Psalms are lament. And lament, I think in one way, is complaint. It's basically the psalmists, who are sharing, expressions of grief or sorrow, of just, why is this going on? I don't know, I understand it. God, I'm just blurblizing it out to you. And there's something I think we can learn from that. But also having others alongside us as we do this is so important. That's why, I think it's so important that as the body of Christ, we're there to share with each other, having those people that hold us accountable, but also who we can be honest with in a safe environment. And I think, as an aside, that's why, as a pastor, I would hope for every single person who's part of the church family to either be in a life group, so a small group, or in a prayer partnership, or ideally both, if I'm really going for it. But because of the benefit that it is to have those people that we build those relationships with, that we can really talk to, we can really share with. And we can call up and say, actually, today I just had the worst day ever, and if I'm honest, I just want to punch that guy. Or if I'm honest, I just don't know how to deal with what I saw, or how that person responded to me. And actually, it's in those relationships that we're able to just share and support each other. So we need to ask ourselves, where are we at in this? But we also need to ask ourselves, I think, is it justified when we think of our anger? Is it a righteous anger? Or is it actually, if we're honest, just me not getting my way? Or things not outworking as I hope they would? Micah 6:8, there's those probably well-known words for many of us. And what does the Lord require of us? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Sometimes that means speaking up and speaking out and putting ourselves in harm's way or in an uncomfortable position. Other times, though, that might mean us keeping our mouths shut. Because actually, this has just annoyed me, but actually that's because of my actions maybe first, or situations that have gone on. But it's asking that question, what does this look like for us? And then the kind of the second overarching question I would want to pose is, how will I respond? You know, as I said at the start of this series, the fruit of the Spirit is not some pick and mix stand that we can go along to and we can kind of say, well, I'll pick that one, but not that one, thank you. That one I don't quite understand, or it doesn't really work for me, but this one is great. No, the Bible is saying, actually, you know, Paul is right in saying this is what it means to be filled with the Spirit. This is what it means to live a life of the Spirit. This is what we should be seeking after, all of them. Sometimes, though, that's hard work, isn't it? So in terms of our response, I think we need to own that with God. Again, where are we struggling? Where are we personally at? And maybe particularly today, for some, it's actually recognizing that we don't cope that well when things happen in life. And for us, the fuse is very short. And actually, how can God help us in that? How can he help us to react differently? And that's not, to recognize that, there are some issues that I know are not insurmountable. There are some things that are big that we face, whether personally or we're aware of going on in the world. It's not to belittle that. It's also not to kind of put us in a place of guilt or condemnation, that you should never get angry about anything. And if you do, well, you're just rubbish and useless and get out of it. No, not at all. We're all works in progress. But it's about going, okay, maybe actually this is an issue that I struggle with. And actually this is something that I need God to minister in my life about. I'm saying, God, would you please, by your Spirit, help me to own it with God? I think another response might be saying, help me weather the storm, Lord. It may not be our struggle, but to be patient here, it does, I think, relate to verse 20, but it might actually be something that we're going through in life that is just seriously hard work and challenging, and actually there is no necessarily kind of thing that's going to change it. Actually, sometimes we go through these valleys that are just rubbish and tough. And to say that, God can make it all wonderful, yes, he can, but that's not the reality of the world we live in. And sometimes awful stuff happens. And so it's saying, God, will you help us weather this storm? Will you support me and strengthen me through this? Will you grant me just the ability, maybe when there isn't an answer, it doesn't all make sense, to keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep going. And the last thought in terms of how will I respond, I think it's asking that question, in all of this, what am I modeling? Coming back to that heart of how we live in lives that are Spirit-filled, that are different. There's something distinct about them. It's a different area, but I think it relates here, and I've shared it before, but I can vividly remember as a teenager sitting with one of my friends after school one day in his back garden, and him turning to me at one point. We're sitting on kind of a picnic bench, and we're talking away, and he turns to me, and he said something along the lines of, Ed, as a Christian, should you be swearing? He knew, he's not a Christian, still not a Christian, he knew that there should be something different about me because of what I said I was as a Christian, as someone who was part of the church, believed in God and all that sort of. He could see that wasn't quite matching up. And I wonder whether sometimes we need to just take that opportunity to go, what am I modeling? Is the way that I react to situations actually pointing people to Jesus, or is it doing something completely different? You know, when we're faced with situations, we're frustrated, and we don't know how to do, how can we model something of Jesus? Yeah, it was the pastor, Joseph Gallingen, who said, the Christian life isn't difficult, it's impossible. If we don't know that, says, we will try to do things ourselves. Faith is not necessary when we think we can do it ourselves. Faith comes along when we realize that we cannot do it on our own. Let me pray. Lord, I want to thank you for the truth that we find in your word, the encouragement, the challenge, the resource to enable us to live our lives. And if we find ourselves here this morning with that sense that you've maybe put your finger on something that is a struggle for us, and our response as we go through life and the different circumstances and situations we face, we know are not always as they should be because of the words that we say or the things that we do, the reactions that we take. I pray that you will fill us afresh with your Spirit, that you will help us just to learn more of what your patience is about. For those this morning, Lord, who maybe, actually that quote sums it up, you know, that actually we think we can do this on our own and we don't actually need any help. I pray, Father, that you'll open our eyes, not so much to the help that we need, but to the opportunity that is there to live a life filled and full of you. Pray, Father, that you will move by your Spirit now, that you will come, touch us, Lord, afresh. Have your way with us, Lord, I pray. Amen.